The camels of the romantic Middle East helped raise the city of Tel Aviv from the sands, and within a few years it had become a bustling metropolis. In the midst of a Jewish national rebirth, justly renowned for its agricultural achievements, Tel Aviv developed a popular beach, social life, cultural life, and nightlife. As both documenter and active participant in all of these, no one could surpass Baruch Agadati. By the early 1960s, the landmarks of Little Tel Aviv were giving way to high-rise structures. Baruch Agadati's home was a stubborn island within a sea of change. Agadati dwelt surrounded by the memorabilia of a lifetime of rich artistic endeavor, encompassing the oldest and newest forms of expression, ranging from dance performance through the graphic arts as a painter, and last but not least, the art of film. Baruch Agadati arrived in Jerusalem in 1910. He had been born Baruch Kaushansky in Bessarabia in 1895. At the age of 15, he became a student at Professor Boris Schatz's Bezalel School of Arts and Crafts. We may never know for sure whether Agadati is one of the youths in this art class, filmed by visiting British Zionist Murray Rosenberg in 1911. Or in these scenes of youthful exuberance in the school's courtyard. Seen in the background is the school's photographer, Yaakov Ben-Dov, who was to become Agadati's most important predecessor in the field of Hebrew film. Prominent personalities of the day were captured by Ben-Dov's camera, among them the British Mandate's first High Commissioner for Palestine, Sir Herbert Samuel, and his successor, Lord Plumer, as well as many less official figures. If you will it, it is no dream. By the late 1920s, Theodor Herzl's vision of a Jewish state was well on the way to fulfillment. Menachem Usishkin and David Ben-Gurion were among the Zionist leaders caught by an amateur cameraman at the 1929 Zionist Congress in Zurich. They, and the others seen here, were helping to promote the growing Jewish presence in Palestine. Zionism had its own film industry. The film Springtime in Palestine, shot by Yaakov Ben-Dov and directed by his friend Yosef Gal Ezer, was its most prestigious product of the silent era. It included this scene of the 1928 Queen of Tel Aviv's Purim celebrations, Tzipora Tzabari, together with their perennial king, Baruch Agadati. When the German Jewish newspaper, the Jüdische Rundschau, carried this advance notice for springtime in Palestine in late 1928, the facing page contained an article on Agadati's latest tour as a dancer. He had spent World War I in Odessa, returning to Palestine in 1919. In addition to giving many dance performances abroad and at home, Agadati had become synonymous with Tel Aviv's Purim festivities and the local beauties annually crowned as their queen. Natan Axelrod filmed these events for the Moledet newsreel, and he and Agadati became friends. An attempt at joint filmmaking ensued, but foundered for a variety of reasons. While Agadati is believed never to have danced for the cameras, these shots of the Hora Agadati, named after him, are among the earliest in his film collection. In 1930, Agadati struck out on his own in this new medium, beginning modestly with commercial and advertising films. An important ally was Meir Dizengoff. The colorful Dizengoff, Tel Aviv's founder and mayor, was an experienced businessman who helped market Agadati's films abroad, while the Aga company began to establish a distinct identity and artistic style. Agadati took his film work quite literally to new heights. Sir Arthur Walkup was Palestine's 4th British High Commissioner and held that position during Agadati's most prolific years in film. He was one of the many figures and events filmed for Agadati's Aga newsreel. Here we see him, among other VIPs, at the opening of the 1932 Levant Fair. And here is Zionist leader Nahum Sokolov, accompanied as always by his daughter Selina. Yitzhak Ben-Tzvi, Israel's future president, is one of the speakers when Chief Rabbi Cook officiates at the inauguration of the Jewish National Fund's wing in the Jewish Agency building. Chaim Arlozorov, murdered head of the agency's political department, is laid to rest in June 1933. David Ben-Gurion is prominent among the mourners. The second Lord Melchett visits the settlement named after his father, Sir Alfred Mond. Henry Mond followed in his father's footsteps as an active supporter of Palestine's sporting endeavors, and these too were recorded by Agadati. The man at the right removing his hat is Reuven Rubin, one of Agadati's many friends and colleagues in Palestine's artistic world. Ziona Tajer strikes a pose, as does Nahum Gutman. The poet Yaakov Fichman was supposed to have given Agadati his name, which means legendary. The writer Avraham Shlonsky is at the center of this literary group. Avigdor Hameiri was a popular author who had already been interested in film in the 1920s, writing both criticism and scripts, which in the absence of a real local film industry were not produced. The first time Hameiri's work could be seen on the screen seems to have been this short cartoon, produced by Agadati and drawn by the artist Aryeh Navon. Hameiri wrote the rhyming intertitles for the adventures of Gadi Ben Susi, which told of the somewhat surreal exploits of a Yemenite immigrant in Tel Aviv. Agadati also used animation in his advertising films for products ranging from shoes to soap flakes. A technology more far-reaching than these simple tricks was soon to change everything. The cantor Yosele Rosenblatt had been featured in the revolutionary American sound film The Jazz Singer in 1927. 6 years later he came to Palestine to star in My People's Dream, an early local talkie, but died during the filming. It was also to be Yaakov Ben-Dov's last film. Unable to obtain sound equipment, Ben-Dov left the industry, selling the films he had made to Baruch Agadati. At the same time, Avigdor HaMeiri had been working on new dramatic film scripts, which at last included dialogue and cues for music and sound effects. Like many screenwriters before and after him, HaMeiri tried to encapsulate the essence of modern Jewish Palestine. In mid-1933, the Orient Film Corporation announced its plans to make the first major Palestinian talkie from a story by HaMeiri. Equipment and technicians were brought from abroad, auditions were held, and production began. But then the backers withdrew. Agadati purchased the imported equipment and became the first local filmmaker independently capable of sound production. Agadati's first use of sound was simply to give his commercials musical accompaniment, but these swiftly acquired dialogue as well. Before long, Agadati was using dialogue in public service films such as this. In May 1934, a disastrous flood struck the city of Tiberias. In chronicling the city's misfortune, Agadati provided the local film industry with another significant milestone.
הגפילם מציג בזה את הפילם ריפורט הראשון בארץ ישראל המדבר עברית. כל העבודות התלויות ביצירת הריפורטאז' הזה, לרבות גם צילום הכל, עשויות כולן בסטודיה אגפילם תל אביב.
Agadati frequently used his studio to record the cultural life of which he himself was such an integral part. Here are two characterizations by the actor David Vardi. Another visitor to the studio was the singer Leah Deganit. An invaluable and constant presence behind the scenes was Agadati's brother Yitzhak. Several years later, Yitzhak was to be a founder of Israel's Geva film studios. Ben Oiserman, later a cameraman and director who in 1967 was to be killed by a mine near Gaza on the second day of Israel's Six-Day War, also worked with Agadati in the 1930s. Together with his crew, Agadati succeeded in capturing on film the flavor and excitement of Tel Aviv in the 1930s. In 1934, Agadati embarked upon his most ambitious film project, a semi-documentary account of 50 years of Jewish growth in Palestine. Scripted by Avigdor HaMeiri and entitled This is the Land, the sweeping narrative combined actuality footage by both Ben-Dov and Agadati with specially shot dramatic scenes featuring emblematic characters.
אין זו אגדה. רבים התייאשו מהסרט המדבר עברית מתוצרת הארץ, ואומרם, הלא אין זה אפשרי, וגם לא כדאי, ואין אנו מוכשרים להכינו. הנה, הצלחנו. הפילם, זאת היא הארץ, יוצג לפניכם בקרוב באולם הזה. הסרט כבר נגמר, כולו מדבר ומזמר עברית, ולשמחתנו הרבה, כולו תוצרת תל אביב. בפילם הזה מוצגת ועוברת לפנינו ארץ ישראל במשך 50 שנה האחרונות. לפנינו דור התחייה, צרותיו, שירתו ושמחת יצירתו.
Only a fragment of this scene, excised in the final version, survives today. These behind-the-scenes shots of its filming, however, give an idea of the production atmosphere.
ein Moment, Lani, ein Moment. Ein Moment, Lani.
עוד קצת גרים אני מבקש, עוד קצת.
טוב. הנה, ככה, ובקושיים כאלה סובבנו את הסרט הזה.
This is the Land covered the milestones of the previous 50 years of Palestine's history. The Biluim, the pioneers who had come in 1882. The founding of Tel Aviv in 1909.
רשות הדיבור למר דיזנגוף.
אנחנו מניחים פה אבן הפינה ליסוד שכונת אחוזת בית היא תל אביב.
The outbreak of World War I.
אמא, אני אשוב, אני מוכרח לשוב לאדמה הזו.
Balfour Declaration of 1917.
ממשלת הוד מלכותו מביטה בעין יפה על ייסוד בית לאומי לעם ישראל בארץ ישראל, ובמיטב כוחותיה תתאמץ להקל השגת המטרה הזאת, אך בתנאי ברור ומפורש שלא יעשה שום דבר העלול להזיק לזכויותיהן האזרחיות והדתיות של העדות הבלתי יהודיות אשר בארץ ישראל, או לזכויותיהם ומעמדם המדיני של היהודים באיזו ארץ אחרת.
חביבי, כנראה גם אתה היית בחזית. נפצעת ידידי. אין דבר, אין דבר. נו, אין דבר. בעצמי נרפאתי גם אותך רפא. נו, הרים את הראש יחד איתי, הרים.
In the hands of Agadati, the urban romantic, a conflict between city and country life became the main motif of the film's dramatic scenes.
אך הבטיחי לי, אל תעזבו את קברי, אל תעזבו את חדרה.
הייתי רוצה לדעת, לאן אתה הולך בעצם? אינני יכול יותר. אתם מבינים או לא? אין כוח. ולשם מה כל הסבל הנורא הזה? רוצים אנחנו כולנו פה. אחד רוצח את השני. וכל זה לשם איזה דבר הנקרא עתיד. לא בעד האוכל, לא בעד היין, ולא בעד החיים היפים, וגם לא בעד הכסף, כי בעד הסבל.
אני שואל אותך, למה העולים החדשים אינם רוצים ללכת אל הכפר ורוצים להישאר בעיר? מה זה? הלוא אנחנו ברחנו מן העיר. כלום, שוב גטו אנו רוצים לעשות לנו כאן.
העיר העברית זהו מרכז למסחר, לתעשייה, למלאכה וגם לתרבות כמובן. בתי ספר, טכניון, אוניברסיטה, ועל כולם חשובה העיר בשבילנו, בשביל הכפר. העיר היא קונה את התוצרת שלנו. בקיצור, בלעדי העיר אין הכפר יכול להתקיים. ובכן חברים, ראינו את העיר, ראינו את הצד החיובי שבה, תעשייה, מסחר, מלאכה ותרבות. הכל טוב ויפה, אולם יחד עם זה ראינו גם את הצד השלילי שבה, את הצד המכוער. ראינו את סטילי הגולה הארורה. בבתי הקפה הם יושבים הסטילים הללו ומצרצרים בגופה ובנשמתה של האומה. את האדמה הם מוכרים מיד אל יד. אדמה ועוד ראינו נוער.
While these static dialogue scenes may seem unsophisticated today, they led up to a pulsating climax that proved Agadati's mastery of moving images and music. This was the same year in which Agadati gave up live dance performance, believing that he had gone as far as his audience could follow him. It is fitting then that the finale of This Is the Land, Agadati's lasting claim to a place in film history, should be a virtuoso piece of cinematic choreography.
אדמה נחוצה לנו, נלך חברים, נלך.
This Is the Land was widely seen in Palestine and abroad in foreign language versions. In 1936, the Jewish National Fund acquired it for distribution, and Agadati adapted and updated it. While Agadati had become more sophisticated in 6 years of filmmaking, he was unable to repeat the success of This Is the Land. On a smaller scale, he continued to film music and dance, both imported and local. The continuing tensions after Palestine's Arab riots of 1936 are a constant presence in Agadati's film work of the late 1930s. The visual hallmark of the period was the erection of tower and stockade settlements, but the security issue was evident even in the coverage of violinist Bronislav Huberman's visit to Kibbutz Ein Harod.
הכנר הוברמן לפני עוזבו את עין הרוד עובר בשדרותיה היפות ומבקר במוסדותיה השונים. הוא ניגן בכינורו לפני המונים של עובדים שנהרו אליו מכל פינות העמק בהתלהבות רבה. בידידות לבבית נפרדו ממנו החברים בתקווה לראותו חזרה בארץ המשמשת לו מקור של התעוררות והתלהבות רבה. הבחורים בחניתה מבלים בחפירות ההגנה עם רובים בידיהם על משמר הגבול הצפוני. עוד לפני שנתיים הייתה כל הסביבה עמק בית שאן שמם וחרב, ועכשיו אזור עברי, יישובים רבים על אדמת קרן הקיימת בישראל.
Some of Israel's future leaders make early screen appearances in these films. Here, as a founder of Kibbutz En-Gev, is future Jerusalem Mayor Teddy Kollek. Here is future Prime Minister Levi Eshkol. And here is future President Zalman Shazar. When the 1930s ended, so did Baruch Agadati's most concentrated film work. A decade later, after World War II and Israel's War of Independence, Agadati made a modest comeback. His 16mm film about Tel Aviv in winter showed a city that had undergone much change since This Is the Land played at the Mograbi Cinema in 1935. Paulette Goddard and John Lund were now at the Mograbi in Bride of Vengeance. Some things, however, had not changed. Agadati also made a short film about Purim. The massive festivities of which he'd been king 25 years earlier had given way to the austerity of the new state, and Agadati's sad nostalgia was expressed in the film's narration.
היו ימים, בתל אביב חגגו את הפורים אחרת, לגמרי אחרת. ריקודים עד אור הבוקר ברחובות שטופי ששון, שירה, פרסים, יפהפיות, חג שזכה לפרסום רב כמעט כמו הקרניבל בניסה, פורים בתל אביב. מסורת צבעונית ומגוונת שפסקה סמוך ללידתה. סצנה קיים בישראל. והסצנה אינו מתיישב עם קרניבלים מהודרים, אגלוידות, הילולות עם, חגיגות שעשועים. לכן, פורים כיום הוא חג של סצנה. וכך, עד שישובו ימי הפאר הגדולים של אגלוידות ומשחקי עם וריקודים עם שירה ברחובות עד עלות השחר, חוגגים הקטנים את החג ככל אשר תשיג ידם.
In the 1950s, Agadati again exchanged the movie camera for the paintbrush, though the content of his work in both media overlapped. Both he and his friends had grown older. Apart from minor involvements with his brother's Geva film studio, Agadati was only to return to film production one last time. In 1963, Agadati put together a historical compilation, Tomorrow's Yesterday, that was in some ways an updated re-editing of This Is the Land. Perhaps wisely, he did not try to top the climax of his greatest work, but ended his film career by presenting it again almost unchanged with a new soundtrack. In 1972, Agadati attended the opening of the Film Archive at the Hebrew University that would eventually acquire and preserve his films. In early 1976, a lifetime of ceaseless creativity finally came to an end.